Book of Luke, chapter 18, and as I shared many times with us this evening, I just wish to call to remembrance things that we know, just to encourage you to live a life that you know you should, allow Christ to influence every decision you make, everything that you do. Allowing Christ to be reflected through you, that the world sees Him in you, that you don't try to get any recognition and glory, that simply don't try to be good enough, because we know we're not. Just simply let Christ be seen in you is all you've got to do. We know that's the definition of grace, the divine influence on our heart, reflection in our life thereof. So this short, simple thought this evening, just recalling these things to remembrance. But as I get started, though, I'd like to apologize to the church. This is what I was teaching on ago. As you see, I've not shaved. I got hit with a rock the other day on my cheek right here. I see, I got hit with a rock, and it's a boo-boo, and trying to shave on that would have been very discomfort.
Covered your own face.
Well, I didn't want to shave. I didn't want to shave around and just leave that spot right there. That would have been really weird. But
It's getting more weird all
well, maybe I slept in this morning and I didn't feel like shaving when I got up. You guys remember that I never shaved until like Saturday anyway. I shave Saturday night or Sunday morning, whichever one I choose to take a bath that week.
You can't make it no better.
For that bathing time. For that Sunday morning service, I promise you I take a bath more than 4 times a month. I really honestly do.
He's been acting funny.
I could have shaved when I got home, but, I just didn't feel like it either. And I didn't have much time. I only had 30 minutes. I got home from work. I was only in the house 30 minutes, so that's not enough time to shave, is it? You guys ain't buying a single thing I say, are you?
Throw your shovel away.
Well, what am I standing here trying to do? Make excuses.
I was going to fix to say, excuses only satisfies the one that makes them.
Amen. And that's what I want to preach about this evening, is our excuses. Because we're good at throwing them out, and they sound good to us. I really thought you'd buy the sword. That hurt. That knocked me out, that rock hit me. The fact that it was almost a week ago was just a memory. It's painful. But, our excuses sound awful good to us, as Sister Carol shared with us. But really, our excuses to God may sound even better because we may put some thought in. I was wanting to be humorous. I was wanting to be exaggerate to get the point across what our excuses are. But even our excuses that we put lots of thought into, that he'll buy this. This is a good one. He's going to like this. To God, he's still like, put your shovel down. I saw the whole thing, okay? I was there through it all, so you're not going to get me. And in Luke 14, we find an example of a great supper. What about Luke 14 and 18? And that one wasn't the game. I may have said something wrong actually at that time. I really want us to be in the book of Luke, and in chapter 14, and in verse 18 is the key point for the scorekeepers of this passage we're going to read. But we're going to start in verse 15 and read into it, of this great supper, this parable that Christ is laying out. And they have these excuses, and they may sound crazy to us, but in the time frame they were there, they actually were much more legitimate than we may think that they were, for the customs that they were in. In Luke 14, verse 15, and when one of them that sat at meat with him heard these things, he said unto him, Blessed is he that shall eat bread in the kingdom of God. Then said he unto him, A certain man made a great supper, and bade many, and sent his servant at supper time to say to them that were bidden, Come, for all things are now ready. And they all with one consent began to make excuse. The first said unto him, I have bought a piece of ground, and I must needs go and see it. I pray thee, have me excused. You know, that sounds like a reasonable thing. The buyer's pride. When you first buy something, you want to show it off. You want to see it. And if you bought land, especially today, lots of land gets sold on eBay. It gets sold on the internet. Even the local park of love, Birdsong, a lot of the other auctioneers, they're having full estate sales on the internet now. You can go on to Birdsong's website and sign up for auction. He'll do it. Here today, he did a couple complete auctions where they got pictures of everything, and you go on, you make a little bid. You can go to an auction now from the pleasures of your laptop or your phone. For me, actually, I play my phone. You can buy the real estate. You can literally buy property without ever going to it. And if you do, you really probably want to go see it. And that's what we have here. There is a little bit of legitimacy. He bought some property. It is a reasonable request to say, I need to go look at this property, especially with today's mentality and man's mentality we've always had. You guys can work around me, right? This is what I want to do. I'd be glad to be at your supper, but I can't make it this week, so if you have it next week, I'll come. But if you have it next week, then it's going to be someone else's problem. And one of the hardest things there is to do is to make a schedule for a bunch of people to participate in. We can understand that just no more than we are trying to get together for a special occasion, for a special time, for something. We end up, our quarterly business meetings end up getting postponed many times because of things happening. It's hard to schedule. So here, he can't come. He wished he could. I pray, have me excused, but I really need to leave this land. The next one. Notice though, verse 18 said, they had to make an excuse. And they all with one consent began to make excuse. Verse 19, another said, I have bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I go to prove them. I pray thee, have me excused. And this may be a really important deal. His oxen was a matter of life to him. These oxen may have only had a 24-hour warranty. You know, these oxen may have only had a 24-hour guarantee. If you hadn't tried them out and tested them, see how good they are in 24 hours, buyer beware. So this is probably a reasonable request. He wanted to go check out his oxen, so he needed to be excused. It was a waste of money if he didn't. Next one, another said, verse 20, I have married a wife, and therefore I cannot come. And we may smucker at that and smile, but we know the tradition back then, don't we? When they got married, they had a year off, right? They were given custom-wise, so according to understanding of other sermons I've heard other preachers comment on, it makes sense. Their custom was they had a year. They got married, they had a year. And then from there, it was on. They had to work all the time. So it was a reasonable thing as well. So that servant came and showed his Lord these things. Then the master of the house, being angry, said to his servant, go out quickly into the streets and lanes of the city, and bring in hither the poor, and the maimed, and the halt, and the blind. And the servant said, Lord, it is done as thou hast commanded, and yet there is room. And the Lord said to the servant, go out into the highways and hedges, and compel them to come in, that my house may be filled. For I say unto you that none of those men which were bidden shall taste of my supper. Yet they all had what they appeared to be good excuses. And when we look at them from fleshly standpoints, they may also sound like good excuses to us. But the master, the Lord, had no response. He didn't accept them. It wasn't, basically, it was, what was it to him? It was just foolishness to him, because what makes sense to them made none to him, and he was the Lord. And our excuses, although they may sound good to us, each one of these pertain to themselves, pertain to flesh. And God pertains to God and pertains to spirit. So he's not worried about our fleshly matters. He's not worried about our fleshly matters and our concerns and our weights. He's worried about our spiritual well-being. So I want us to examine our excuses pretty close. And be willing to say, all right, I got to put my shovel down. It's easy to tell somebody else put your shovel down. But it's harder to put your own shovel down because, you just one more scoop is all it's going to take. It's just one more. If I could just get you to understand this one thing. I've preached this topic many times, and one of the things I share all the time with this is a reminder to us that an excuse, if you think about it for what it is, as Sister Carol had shared wisely with it. But also we know that that excuse, your intent behind it, you're trying to share more information with somebody. Because if they knew what you knew, they would accept it. You just don't know what I know. You just don't know if you knew what I knew. If you really knew how, if you really just tried to share more information, well, which one of us can share information with God? Because He already knows it all. He already sees it all. He's already, He not only knows everything that went on today, He knows everything that will go tomorrow. Amen? So we can't even plan an excuse out because He's already been there as well. God, and yet we come up with our excuses and we try to make silly ones and we try to make these big excuses and round. And I was thinking of this as I share them sometimes where my sermons come from. It really wasn't because I didn't shave. It was today, every month in my job, we've got to turn in we've got to report so many houses. We've got to complete so many houses and report when we're done. Well, the contractor has to be done. Well, the contractor has had all month to get 3 houses done. And he's not. And so today he was making a mad dash to finish all 3 houses. He got one done yesterday. I went to that house. And I was at that house he finished yesterday, finalizing it today. He was at another house waiting on me. My plan was to finalize one house, go to the next house, and do it, and then tomorrow I'll do one and we're done, right? Well, the house he was at today had 14 windows in it. He's had all month to put 14 windows in this house. And he had them ordered. He ordered them. They had them in, but he didn't get them in. Well, he went there this morning, and he started putting them in, and he called me about 11 o'clock in a panic because he had a problem. Because one window was 4 inches too big. What am I going to do? Well, that's no problem. You got a bunch of saws, just make the hole bigger. That's simple. I can't. I was like, I've seen your construction trailer. You've got all kinds of saws. You can't make a hole 4 inches bigger. Take a 2x4 out. I can't. Now, what do you mean you can? And he was, well, you see this wall, there's the corner, and then there's the door, and then there's the window, and then there's the corner. It's just a little short porch wall there, and it's all studs all the way across and around. I tried and I can't. There's no literal, no possible way. I said, okay, so just make that wall 4 inches bigger. And he said, I can't make the wall 4 inches bigger because then it goes outside the house. I got to make the other side bigger. So make that wall bigger. And he's like, but then I got to put a roof on. I said, so put that. He said, I'm not building the house, lady, the house for 4 inches. I said, so what do you think you should do? Well, I'll go to the lumberyard and get another window. I said, okay, sounds good. Go get the right window. He was wanting a pass to not finish the job. His excuse of not finishing it was that window was wrong because he was at Wapple Pebble. And Wapple Pebble was so far from Harbor Bluff. It was a long ways back to Menards to get the right window. Or Pax, or Home Depot, or Gamblings, or, well, there's a few others, I think. There's all options. He had all kinds of options to get the right window, and all they had to do then, yet he wanted another month to get by with it. Because he waited to the last minute. I could care less about his excuses. I don't care what he took. That window was going to get put in today, and it did. So, but it made good sense to him. Oops, the window's 4 inches too big. It won't fit, so I got to wait. We have good excuses. God don't care about our excuses because God knows how much time we put off too, right? God ever told you to do something, you put it off, you waited a whole month, you got the last day to get it done in. God ever told you to do something, okay. Then finally when God is on you so hard, when God is convicting you so hard, and you're like, I'm going to go do it, and then all of a sudden you can't do it. Well, I can't do it, God. You ever feel like you should talk to somebody, you need to visit someone, and I'll do it, and finally when God convicts you so hard, strong, you finally, all right, I'm going to go see them. When you get there, they're not home. You ever try to use that excuse for God? Well, see, I tried, God, they're not home. And I think, if they were home all the other times I told you to go, the peace don't go away until you go see them. Again, our excuses may sound good to us, but they don't to God. Some of you guys are smiling like you enjoy this. Some of you guys are frowning at me. Am I hitting too close to home? You got some excuses you're trying to play to God that He's not buying? Because, again, He only cares about spiritual things. Go to John 4. Because it is our way to put things off. It is mine, and I get bit all the time that way. Someday, I haven't yet. Someday I may learn my lesson. I pray I do. But it is a human nature. And it is one that we find referenced here in the book of John, chapter 4. And verse 30. Then they went out of the city, and they came unto him. In the meanwhile, the disciples prayed him, saying, Master, eat. But he said unto them, I have meat to eat that ye know not of. Therefore said the disciples one another, Have any man brought him aught to eat? Well, who snuffed some food out here to Jesus? Jesus said to them, My meat is to do the will of him that sent me, and to finish his work. Now he says in verse 35, he says, Say not ye, there are yet 4 months, and then cometh harvest. Behold, I say unto you, lift up your eyes, and look on the fields, for they are white, already to harvest. And he that reapeth receiveth wages, and gathereth fruit unto the eternal, that both he that soweth and he that reapeth may rejoice together. And herein is that saying true, one soweth and another reapeth. I sent you to reap that wherein you bestowed no labor, other men labored, and you entered into their labors. Goes on with the Samaritans. But look at this in verse 35. Don't say I got 4 months before it's time to harvest. I got time to wait. I can sleep in. I can wait a little bit more. I can just postpone. I can enjoy my day. I know I got a lot of work to do, but I can do it later because it's not time yet. Don't say there's yet 4 months until the time of the harvest. He says, look around. The harvest is ready now. We're putting things off. It's time to be doing. And we have all kinds of excuses of why. Of why we can't do this, why we can't do that, why we can't make it to the church service, why we can't do this, why we have singings, and we're supposed to be reconsidering that as a church, whether we're going to keep having our singings or not. I hope we haven't forgotten and prayed about that. One of the reasons is because we have our singings, the church set aside time to have a singing, and our congregation comes up with more excuses why not to come than guests do, because we have more guests here than we do of our congregation. And when we've got all good, well, I don't think we should, or I'm on a headache, or I'm at work, or I this, we got all excuses of why we can't do what the body said we should do. We have Wednesday night service, which we are now, and we're blessed because we are sticking pretty close to what we do on Sunday nights, tonight anyway, at other times, but we have all these things. If we have dinners where I can't cook, we have excuses of why we can't even show up physically sometimes. How many excuses do you make about why you don't do what God wants you to do? Because my challenge is this. Is this our worship service? Or do we worship God tomorrow? We worship God all of our life, right? We come together to get strength to go into the world so that we have the strength to go into the world and to serve God. Do you even bother making excuses up why you don't do what God wants you to do? One of the definitions of sin, he that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, him to sin. Do you do everything you know you're supposed to do? Not a one of us does. And sometimes we've gotten so lazy we don't even bother making excuses why we don't do it. Because we know God don't like excuses. So we've got 2 options. We can either start doing it, or we can just stop making excuses and just still not do it. God wants us to do. God wants us to live. God wants us to serve. God wants us to allow Him to be seen in us. And there's still, if you don't make an excuse, that's almost like saying, you know you shouldn't have done it. You know you should have done it, you just didn't want to. So go ahead, tell God, I didn't want to. Here, don't put it off. Procrastination is a part of our human set to some degree. That's why we have to live in the Spirit, not the flesh. Romans chapter 2. This is really, but you don't understand the circumstances, Jared. You just don't know. I know what you're thinking, but you just don't know. We have all these mindsets. I know that I did the same thing he did, but he was wrong. Because you don't know what I had to deal with. You don't know what went on in my case. You don't know we have all of these circumstances. Well, why somebody else's situation is so much worse than ours. And there's a really neat word in our English language that we find used in Romans chapter 2, verse 1. Can you guess which one I'm looking at? Inexcusable. So you picked that one out pretty easy. Therefore thou art inexcusable. Anybody Anybody feel like you need help understanding that word? We understand what that means, right? We're good excusers, right? Well, there's no point in excusing. There is no excuse. Inexcusable, we know there is no excuse. It's inexcusable. There is no excuse. Therefore thou art inexcusable, O man, whosoever thou art that judgest. No, man, I'm not even talking making excuses for not doing what God wanted. Yeah, I'm telling you, there is no excuse for judging someone. When thou judgest another, thou condemnest thyself, for thou that judgest does the same thing. Brother Donnie has a verse he really enjoys reading to us, and I'm thankful that he does. When he reads to us in the book of James, chapter 2, I believe it is, when he says, when you're guilty of one, you're guilty of all. Amen? Who here has ever looked at someone and thought their sin was worse than yours? All right, 3 of us have. The rest of you guys, I guess you're too busy looking at me. Like, you're right, your sin is worse than mine. Now, when the Bible says you're guilty of one, you're guilty of all, you better be very, very careful, because our noses make very good sights. But they work shoot backwards. You know, I guess you've seen the picture of the guy with the gun. You know, the handle's put on backwards. Well, that's what it's like. When you use your nose for a gun sight, go ahead and do it. Just realize that it shoots backwards. Because when you're looking down your nose at somebody else, you're inexcusable. There is no excuse for judging somebody, condemning someone, because we all make mistakes. We all do things wrong. It is a human trait. Part of our flesh is the stuff that looks at somebody else's sin and says, that sin is worse than anything I have ever done. I have never done nothing that despicable, that deplorable, that horrible. I've never done nothing that disgusting. I've never done nothing that, I just can't even imagine what word to put with it. I've never done nothing that bad. Well, we need to have a mirror, because here, you're inexcusable, old man. Whosoever thou art that judgeth, for when thou judgest another, thou condemnest thyself, for thou that judgest does the same thing, because you're guilty of one, you're guilty of all, and we all have something that we've done wrong. Making an excuse for running a stoplight is just as bad as making an excuse for telling a lie. Making an excuse for cheating on taxes is just as much as making an excuse for shooting someone. Again, making an excuse is making an excuse because you're doing something, you did something wrong. We need to discern actions so we can help someone stop doing it, and so we cannot do it ourselves. But the moment we're condemning someone, what's our excuse? Because that sin was worse than ours, justify that by the Scripture. But verse 2 says that we are sure that the judgment of God is according to truth against them which commit such things. And thinkest thou this, O man, just in case 2 was not written well, just in case I was unable to expound upon it comfortably for you to understand what it meant, Paul tells Romans, and thinkest thou this, O man, and ladies, that judgest them which do such things, and dost the same thing, that thou shalt escape the judgment of God? There's only one reason why you would think you would escape doing something that someone else is doing that you're condemning. That's because you've got a good reason for doing it, right? But when I tell God why I did that, yeah, I know God says not to hold grudges. I know He should forgive me for what I did for Him. I know I stepped on His little toe. You know, I know that He needs to forgive me for stepping on my little toe. But, you know, He just looked at me wrong, and I never forgive Him for that. You know, because He disrespected me. You know, we have all these mindsets of why we can hold a grudge and why somebody else don't. We have all these excuses we take before God, and whatever area it may be, it's not mine to tell you what it is, but it is for the Spirit to tell you what excuse that God is rejecting. Because you guys smiled and laughed, and it's funny a while ago, you put your shovel down, well, this is getting weird, this is, that's, nobody accepted that excuse, and it was given a matter I didn't want you to. Because it was supposed to be able to start off with a little laugh and smile, and realize excuses are just, they're honestly, to get serious about the sermon now, there is no laughing matter of making an excuse. Because we all have to face the fact that we need God and we need His forgiveness. Amen? Things you want excused from is things you're not going to repent of. Because you don't think you did anything wrong. Things you want excused of is things you're going to do again because you think you got away with it. Things you want excused of, you're not willing to go to God with because you're thinking you can do it right next time. And if we don't need to be asking for excuses, arguing excuses. We need to be asking for forgiveness and not judging somebody else when we do the same thing. Look at James chapter 1. Mean old devil. Quick question. Is God, our Heavenly Father, omnipotent? We all know what omnipotent means, right? Everywhere, at all times, all seeing, all knowing, He is everywhere. I believe that with all my being. Yet my question with this is Satan omnipotent? Yet he sure gets blamed like he was. He's blaming everybody for everything. He can only do what God allows him to do. And he is not everywhere. In Job's time, he was going to go up and down. He gets around, and he's got a different existence than we do, no question, but he's not on the same level as God. Yet we pretend like he is because we blame him on things. And realize in James 1:12, blessed is the man that endureth temptation. For when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life which the Lord hath promised to them that love him. Let no man say when he is tempted, I'm tempted of God. For God cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempteth he any man. We can't blame it on God, we can't blame it on the devil, because we're going to find in verse 14 where it really comes from. Why we have to not give any excuse, why we need to own it. We need to own our mistakes, because when we accept where I did wrong, we can go to God and ask for help. When I realize, verse 14, that every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. And if I would, I'd like you to read this with me in your own mind. I am going to read verses 14, 15, and 16 incorrectly, per se. I am going to go ahead and substitute and read it in a personal manner. This is how I want you to take the scriptures. Verse 14. But I am tempted when I am drawn away of my own lust, and when I am enticed. Then when lust hath conceived in me, it will bring forth sin. And when sin is finished in me, it will bring forth my death. I granted I read that incorrectly, but is that an accurate way of reading that verse? To take it and to apply it. Because sometimes I've learned in my home studies and my own reading, and whether it is on the Bible, whether it is on my phone, whether it is taking a verse that Dad or Carrie or Gavin, who's Gavin? I'm sorry. Dad or Carrie or Melissa, they're the ones that's often throwing verses. Gary, that's where Gary came in at. Though they're always putting verses on there, a lot of times I will take the verses that they share and I will contemplate them and take them. But I've learned that I get more out of a verse when I go ahead and read it in a personal manner. Instead of reading it, that Donnie needs to understand that Donnie is drawn away of his lust and he is tempted. Donnie needs to understand that if he don't get that lust under check, that lust is going to conceive, it's going to bring forth a sin in Donnie. And if Donnie doesn't get that sin under control and take it for the Lord, it's going to bring forth, if it's going to finish. If Donnie finishes that sin he started because he lusted, then he's going to be dead. Poor Donnie. We just killed Donnie tonight because it's easy to do that, isn't it? And to throw it out and to give excuse. Well, I didn't know, God. I sure thought Donnie should live a better life than he was doing. When God tells me by bouncing back, it's inexcusable, Jared, but you're doing the same thing. We need to take the scriptures personally. Amen? Take them personally. Be able to take it. 14 does read, but every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. Then when lust hath conceived, bring forth sin, and sin when is finished, bring forth death. That's the way it reads to each and every one of us. But one more time, I would like to read it. But I am tempted when I am run away of my own lust, and I am enticed. Then when the lust in me has conceived, it'll bring forth sin in me. And the sin in me will, if I finish it, it will then bring forth death. We'll keep reading correctly our Bible now, verse 16. Do not err, my beloved brethren. Every good gift, every perfect gift is from above, and cometh down from the Father of lights, with whom is no variableness, neither shadow of turning. What is the point in an excuse? To throw a variable into the equation, isn't it? An excuse. You're trying to share more information. You're trying to throw a variable into the equation. You're trying to throw a variable into. You're trying to make a turning in the. You're trying to make something change. You're trying to get an exception to the rule. But yet, God, there is no variableness, neither shadow of turning. We're going to close in Philippians 2. We read Sunday, if you remember, famous Sunday we know, when Christ was in the garden in Gethsemane praying about the will of God. Didn't I preach about the will Sunday morning? About doing the will of God, not our will. How in the garden Christ was praying, nevertheless not my will, but thine will be done. And if anybody ever had an opportunity to share an excuse and get justification, to get release because of an excuse, to get pardoned because of an excuse, if anyone ever deserved it and had a truth to give, Christ had the perfect excuse, because Christ was the perfect being all the way around, wasn't he? Christ was slain at the foundation of the earth, we know. Christ was the perfect Son, because he came to offer a sacrifice. Christ was the perfect sacrifice. Christ was the perfect human while he was here. Christ was the perfect Son. Christ was the perfect Messiah. Again, Christ was perfect all the way down. And he had the perfect excuse. Because he was going to pay the price for who? For me. Remember, take it personal. And what did he do? But I didn't do it. But I didn't do it. But God, I didn't do it. Nevertheless, Father, not mine will, but thine will be done, was his words. But he could have called 10,000 angels, as the psalm says. But he also could have said, I didn't do it. Never mind, God. These people are a bunch of ungrateful, selfish, self-willed, unrepentant, whatever, on and on. We just throw out all kinds of things. He could have truthfully said about us. And he could have truthfully given the excuse, I didn't do it. But yet he held his tongue. In Philippians chapter 2, verse 8. And being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. You know, we read verse that read this night and we bounce from time to time. If you suffer for your wrongdoing, take it patiently. This is well pleasing with God. You do wrong, take the consequences for your wrong, because you did wrong. That's acceptable with God. Acceptable with God. But it says also, if you don't do wrong, and you be buffeted for it, and you take it patiently, this is pleasing to God. He don't want excuses. He just wants us living for him. Yeah, we may end up suffering something we didn't do. Has anybody got to live something you did do? It's going to balance out. And God's a fair God. He's not going to allow us to suffer more than we're able to bear, yet we make excuses for it. So, take this thought as we pray for verse of Psalm. Do you believe the Scripture, when we read it often, that God will not put more on us than you bear? Do you believe that verse? Amen. So when you make an excuse to try to get out of something, then aren't you saying, God, I don't think I can do it? You're trying to get out of something God's putting on you because getting an excuse to get out of it. It's not going to happen to you if God's not going to make a way for it. Escape through Christ. But again, our simply plain reminder, stop making excuses for what you do and repent as we stand and sing on number 251. 251. chose to go ahead and come and encourage me and each other. I pray that you go home encouraged. I pray that we pay attention to our life and the excuses we try to make. Don't make any excuse. You got something, don't make an excuse because something you did. Just confess it before God and ask for Him to live through you. Any prayer question or announcements anybody may have? Everybody's waiting, just tearing up. So it is good to be together this evening. Love each and every one of you.
Remember Natalie, she travels tomorrow. So that's going to keep her in your prayers.
Any other? Not then. All the prayer groups and hers, lift the breath upon our hearts. Brother Cecil, will you dismiss us in the prayer, please?
Father, we just come before you at this time and praise you so much for another chance to come and gather with your people and hear your word. And we just praise you and give you glory and pray for each and every one name that has been mentioned here tonight that was unable to come here and the ones on the prayer list. We just praise you and ask that your special hand be upon them and touch their body, mind, and soul. And we just praise you for another chance to be here. And we give you all the glory